Welcome, dear friend, to another journey through forgotten hours. If you enjoy these calm and poetic travels, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your thoughts and suggestions in the comments help us grow and create even more meaningful stories together. Let's begin. Chapter 1: Morning Arrival. The first light of dawn touches your eyelids, gently, softly, like the whisper of silk against ancient stone. You awaken slowly, peacefully, in the heart of Pasargadae, the eternal garden city built by Cyrus the Great 2,500 years ago. The morning air carries the scent of roses, Persian roses that have bloomed here since the time of the Achaemenid Empire, their petals still heavy with dew from the cool mountain night. You lie still for a moment, breathing deeply, feeling the earth beneath you. This is sacred soil, the same earth that once felt the footsteps of kings, of philosophers, of poets who understood the language of paradise. The word paradise itself comes from the Persian word paradisa, meaning an enclosed garden, a sanctuary where heaven touches earth. And here, in this moment, you understand why the ancients chose this word for this feeling. The cypress trees above you sway gently, their dark green branches creating patterns of light and shadow on your face. These ancient cypresses, some say they are descendants of trees planted during Cyrus's reign, when this city was the beating heart of the world's first great empire. Their trunks rise straight and tall, like prayers offered to the sky, their branches reaching toward the same stars that guided Persian merchants along the Silk Road centuries ago. You sit up slowly, unhurried, feeling the soft grass beneath your palms. The grass here is different from other places, greener, more alive, nourished by the qanat system that Cyrus's engineers carved beneath the earth. These underground channels, masterpieces of ancient hydraulic engineering, still carry mountain water through tunnels hewn from living rock, bringing life to this oasis in the Iranian plateau. The sound of water reaches your ears, a gentle murmuring, like voices from the past, speaking in a language older than memory. You turn toward the sound, and there, just beyond the cypress grove, you see one of the ancient fountains. Water bubbles up from its center, the same spring that once provided water for the royal gardens, for the Persian kings who walked these paths, who sat in contemplation beside these same pools. You rise to your feet, slowly, gracefully, like a dancer performing an ancient ritual. Your bare feet touch the cool stone of one of the pathways, stone cut and fitted by craftsmen whose names are lost to time, but whose work endures. These stones, limestone quarried from the Zagros Mountains, have felt the passage of countless seasons, countless pilgrims, countless seekers who came here searching for something they could not name. The morning light grows stronger now, painting the distant mountains in shades of gold and rose. Those mountains, the Zagros Range, had stood watch over this valley since before the first human settlements, since before Cyrus chose this place to build his capital. They witnessed the rise of the Persian Empire, the conquests that stretched from India to Ethiopia, from the Aegean Sea to the steppes of Central Asia. You walk slowly, unhurried, taking in the serene beauty around you. along the stone pathway. Each step is deliberate, mindful, like the meditation practices of the ancient magi, the Persian priests who tended the sacred fires and studied the movements of the stars. The magi understood that true wisdom comes not from haste, but from patient observation, from allowing the world to reveal its secrets in its own time. A gentle breeze stirs the air, carrying with it the perfume of jasmine and pomegranate blossoms. These scents, these same fragrances that once delighted Persian queens, that wafted through the windows of palaces where poets recited verses by candlelight, where musicians played the santur and the ney, filling the evening air with melodies that spoke of longing, of beauty, of the eternal search for meaning. The pathway curves gently, following the natural contours of the land. This is the Persian way, to work with nature, not against it. Unlike the rigid geometries of later civilizations, Persian gardens flow like water, like breath, like the natural rhythms of life itself. Every curve, every slope, every placement of stone and tree reflects an understanding that true beauty comes from harmony, not conquest. You pause beside a cluster of rose bushes, their blooms deep red and pink, colors that seem to glow from within. These are Persian roses, Rosa persica, ancestors of all the roses that would later grace the gardens of Damascus, of Andalusia, of Versailles. But here, in their homeland, they bloom with a purity, an intensity of fragrance that speaks of origins, of the source from which all beauty flows. The roses grow beside a low wall of fitted stone, each block carefully shaped and placed without mortar, a technique perfected by Persian stonemasons who learned their craft in the shadow of these very mountains. The wall is warm to the touch already, absorbing the gentle heat of the morning sun, storing it to release slowly as the day progresses, creating microclimates where delicate plants can flourish. Beyond the wall, you glimpse the ruins of what was once a great audience hall, the audience hall of Cyrus the Great, where emissaries from distant lands came to pay tribute to the King of Kings. The massive stone columns still stand, weathered but proud, their capitals carved with images of bulls and lions, symbols of strength and majesty that spoke to visitors in a universal language of power and grace. But there is no harshness here. There is only quiet reflection and timeless beauty. Let the calm embrace you as you rest beneath the stars, feeling the soft breeze and the gentle murmur of water. No sense of domination or fear. The Persian concept of kingship was different, built on the idea of the ruler as shepherd, as protector, as guardian of justice and peace. Cyrus himself was known for his tolerance, his respect for local customs, his understanding that true strength comes not from forcing others to be like you, but from celebrating the diversity of human experience. You continue walking, your footsteps soft on the ancient stones. The pathway leads you past a series of rectangular pools, their surfaces mirror still, reflecting the sky like windows into another world. These pools, called Ab-Anbar, were not merely decorative. They served practical purposes too, cooling the air through evaporation, providing water for irrigation, creating habitat for birds and fish, demonstrating the Persian genius for solutions that are both beautiful and functional. In one of the pools, you see the flash of golden scales, carp that may be descendants of fish that swam here when Cyrus walked these same paths. Fish have always been important in Persian culture, symbols of abundance, of life, of the flowing water that makes existence possible in this semi-arid land. The carp moves slowly, peacefully, their movements creating gentle ripples that catch and scatter the morning light. A bird calls from somewhere in the cypress grove, a melodious trill that echoes off the stone walls and pillars. You pause to listen, allowing the sound to fill your awareness, to connect you with the living spirit of this place. Birds were sacred to the ancient Persians, messengers between earth and sky, symbols of the soul's journey toward enlightenment. The call you hear might be that of a Persian robin or a golden oriole, species that have sung in these gardens for millennia. The air grows warmer as the sun climbs higher, but it remains comfortable, pleasant, thanks to the ingenious design of the Persian garden. The trees provide shade, the water provides cooling. The stone paths and walls create channels for gentle breezes, everything working together in perfect harmony. This is the essence of Persian aesthetics, not the imposition of human will upon nature, but the creation of spaces where nature and human intention dance together in eternal partnership. You see now why the Persians called their gardens paradise, why this word, paradisa, became the model for humanity's dreams of perfection. Here, in these carefully tended spaces, the harshness of the natural world is softened without being destroyed. The beauty of creation is enhanced without being corrupted. The soul finds rest without abandoning its connection to the earth. The pathway leads you to a slight rise, a gentle hill from which you can look back over the gardens you have just traversed. The view takes your breath away, not with its grandeur, but with its gentle perfection. The cypress trees stand in graceful groups. The rose gardens bloom in carefully planned abundance. The pools and fountains create a network of silver threads connecting every corner of this earthly paradise. And beyond the gardens, rising from the heart of Pasargadae, you see the tomb of Cyrus the Great himself. This simple, elegant structure stands alone on a stepped platform. Its clean lines and noble proportions speaking of a king who understood that true immortality comes not from elaborate monuments, but from the example of a life well lived, from the creation of beauty that outlasts the creator, from the establishment of principles that continue to inspire long after the one who proclaimed them has returned to dust. The tomb, built of massive stone blocks fitted together without mortar, has stood here for 25 centuries, surviving earthquakes, invasions, the rise and fall of empires, a testament to the skill of Persian craftsmen and the enduring power of simple, honest beauty. Its inscription, recorded by ancient historians, spoke words that still resonate today. O man, whoever you are and wherever you come from, for I know you will come, I am Cyrus, who won the Persians their empire. Do not therefore begrudge me this bit of earth that covers my bones." These words, humble yet magnificent, capture something essential about Persian culture, about the understanding that power is temporary, that earthly glory fades, but that acts of creation, of beauty, of justice echo through eternity. Cyrus, who could have built pyramids, who commanded resources that dwarfed those of any previous ruler, chose instead to create gardens. The sun is higher now, warming the stone beneath your feet, beginning what will be a perfect day in this perfect place. But perfection here does not mean the absence of change, the absence of growth, the absence of time's passage. It means instead the presence of harmony, the presence of purpose, the presence of that quality the Persians called harvana, the divine glory that illuminates both kings and commoners, both grand palaces and humble gardens, both the living and the memory of those who have gone before. You begin to descend from the hill, following another pathway that winds between ancient irrigation channels, past groves of pomegranate trees heavy with fruit, past beds of herbs whose fragrances rise to meet you with every step. Mint, oregano, saffron, basil, the same herbs that Persian cooks have used for centuries, that Persian physicians prescribed for healing, that Persian poets invoked as metaphors for the varied flavors of human experience. Each plant, each tree, each stone has been placed with intention, with understanding, with love. This is not gardening as mere decoration. This is gardening as spiritual practice, as philosophy made manifest, as proof that human beings can indeed create spaces where heaven touches earth, where the divine becomes visible, where the soul finds both rest and inspiration. The morning air carries new sounds now, the distant call of a muezzin from a village beyond the ruins, the lowing of cattle being led to pasture, the voices of modern pilgrims who come here as you have come, seeking something they cannot quite name. These sounds do not disturb the ancient peace of this place. They are part of it, part of the continuing story, part of the evidence that what Cyrus created here continues to live, continues to inspire, continues to offer sanctuary to all who approach with open hearts. You walk on, unhurried, allowing the morning to unfold at its own pace. There is no schedule here, no urgency, no pressure to see everything or experience everything at once. This is the gift of Persian time, the understanding that the most important moments cannot be rushed, cannot be forced, can only be received with patience, with gratitude, with the kind of attention that allows beauty to reveal itself slowly, completely, perfectly. The pathway leads you past a series of shallow terraces, each one planted with different flowers, different shrubs, different combinations of color and texture and fragrance. This is the Persian approach to garden design, not the formal symmetry of later European gardens, but the natural asymmetry of life itself, the organic balance that comes from understanding rather than control, from cooperation rather than domination. Each terrace tells part of the story of Persian horticulture, of the patient experimentation that brought roses from the wild mountains, that developed new varieties of fruit trees, that learned to cultivate delicate flowers in the harsh climate of the plateau. Persian gardeners were the first to understand that true abundance comes not from forcing nature to produce beyond its capacity, but from creating conditions where natural abundance can flourish, where the earth can give freely of its gifts. You pause beside a pomegranate tree, its branches heavy with fruit in various stages of ripeness. Some pomegranates are still green, others blush with red. Still others have achieved the deep crimson that signals perfect maturity. This tree, like everything else in the Persian garden, teaches patience, teaches the wisdom of allowing things to ripen in their own time, teaches the beauty that comes from accepting the natural cycles of growth and rest, of flowering and fruiting, of abundance and dormancy. The pomegranate has special meaning in Persian culture. Its many seeds symbolizing fertility, abundance, the multiplicity of blessings that flow from a single source. Persian poets often compared the beloved's lips to pomegranate seeds, ruby red and full of sweetness, while Persian mystics saw in the pomegranate's crown a symbol of spiritual authority, of the soul's connection. A gentle wind stirs the leaves, creating a soft susurrus that mingles with the sound of flowing water, with the psalms of birds, with the almost inaudible hum of bees working among the flowers. These sounds, these natural harmonies, create a symphony more beautiful than any human composition, more soothing than any lullaby, more inspiring than any anthem of earthly power. You sit down on a low stone bench, one of many scattered throughout the gardens, placed not randomly, but with careful attention to views, to shade, to the patterns of wind and sun that shift throughout the day. The bench is warm from the morning sun, comfortable, inviting, designed not just for rest, but for contemplation, for the kind of quiet observation that reveals the deeper truths hidden within apparent simplicity. From this vantage point, you can see how perfectly the garden is integrated with the landscape, how the cultivated areas blend seamlessly into the natural vegetation of the plateau, how the built environment enhances rather than competes with the gifts of geography and climate. This is the Persian genius, the ability to see possibilities where others see limitations, to find beauty in adaptation rather than conquest, to create luxury through understanding rather than excess. The bench on which you sit may be 25 centuries old, carved from the same limestone as the tomb of Cyrus, fitted and placed by craftsmen whose skills were passed down through generations of builders, whose work was informed not just by technical knowledge, but by philosophical understanding, by the awareness that what they created would outlast their own lives, would serve purposes they could not fully foresee, would become part of a legacy that would inspire seekers from ages yet to come. You close your eyes, allowing your other senses to explore this environment, to discover nuances that sight alone cannot reveal. The air carries layer upon layer of fragrance, rose and jasmine most prominent, but underneath these, subtler notes, the green scent of cypress, the sharp sweetness of mint, the dusty warmth of stone, the clean freshness of mountain water. Each fragrance distinct yet harmonious, like instruments in an orchestra, like colors in a painting, like voices in a choir praising the glory of creation. The warmth of the sun on your face, the the coolness of the breeze on your arms, the gentle pressure of stone beneath you, the soft whisper of leaves overhead. All of these sensations work together to create a feeling of perfect presence, perfect belonging, perfect peace. This is what the Persian garden was designed to provide. Not escape from the world, but deeper engagement with it. Not withdrawal from life, but fuller participation in its mysteries, its beauties, its endless capacity for wonder. When you open your eyes again, the world seems brighter, more vivid, more alive. The colors of the flowers appear more saturated, the patterns of light and shadow more intricate, the movements of birds and insects more graceful, more purposeful. This heightened awareness, this enhanced perception, is one of the gifts of the Persian garden, one of the reasons why seekers have come here for millennia, why this place continues to offer sanctuary to souls hungry for beauty, for meaning, for connection with something larger than themselves. The morning is advancing now, the sun climbing higher, the shadows growing shorter, but there is no sense of time passing, no anxiety about what must be accomplished, no worry about what lies ahead. The Persian garden exists outside ordinary time, in the eternal now, where past and future meet, where the wisdom of ancient kings converses with the hopes of unborn generations, where the soul finds rest in the knowledge that some things, some places, some experiences transcend the boundaries of mortality, offer glimpses of the eternal, promise continuity beyond the brief span of any individual life. You rise from the bench, refreshed, renewed, ready to continue your exploration of this earthly paradise. The pathway ahead curves gently through a grove of ancient olive trees, their gnarled trunks and silvery leaves speaking of centuries of patient growth, of adaptation to the rhythms of drought and plenty, of the wisdom that comes from deep roots, from connection to sources of nourishment that lie hidden beneath the surface of things. Each step you take, each breath you draw, each moment of awareness adds to the great continuum of experience that connects you with all who have walked here before, with Cyrus himself, with the craftsmen who built these pathways, with the gardeners who planted these trees, with the pilgrims who came seeking what you seek, with the generations yet to come who will find in this place the same peace, the same beauty, the same sense of connection with something eternal and unchanging, yet ever renewing, ever fresh, ever ready to offer its gifts to those who approach with open hearts, with quiet minds, with souls prepared to receive the blessings that flow from the marriage of human wisdom and natural grace. The morning light continues to strengthen, painting everything in shades of gold and amber, creating a luminous quality that seems to emanate from within the stones themselves, from within the leaves, from within the very air you breathe. This is the light of paradise, the radiance that the Persian mystics spoke of when they described the divine presence that permeates all creation, that shines most clearly in places where human intention aligns perfectly with natural harmony, where beauty serves not the ego, but the soul, where power expresses itself not through domination, but through service, through the creation of conditions where life can flourish, where hearts can find peace, where spirits can soar toward their highest possibilities. And as the first chapter of your day in the gardens of Pasargadae draws to a gentle close, you feel yourself settling into the rhythm of this sacred place, feeling your breathing synchronize with the whisper of wind through leaves, your heartbeat align with the pulse of water flowing through ancient channels, your awareness expand to embrace not just this moment, but all moments. Not just this place, but all places where human beings have sought, have found, have celebrated the inexhaustible beauty of existence, the boundless generosity of creation, the eternal possibility of paradise, here, now, in this breath, in this step, in this perfect, peaceful, present moment. The morning sun climbs higher, the shadows shift and dance. The flowers release their fragrances into the warming air. And you, walking slowly along pathways laid down by kings, breathing air perfumed by roses planted by Persian hands, feeling beneath your feet the same earth that supported palaces and gardens for the pleasure of emperors. You continue your journey deeper into this realm of beauty, deeper into this sanctuary of peace, deeper into the eternal garden where time stands still, where souls find rest, where the morning of the world continues forever, in perfect light, in perfect stillness, in the perfect peace that passes understanding. Chapter 2. Walking the gardens. The morning sun has settled into its gentle rhythm now, casting longer shadows that create natural pathways of coolness beneath the ancient trees. You continue your slow walk through the gardens of Pasargadae, feeling yourself becoming part of the eternal rhythm of this place, where time moves not in the harsh minutes and hours of modern life, but in the softer cadences of sunrise and sunset, of flowering and fruiting, of the patient cycles that have governed life in these gardens for over 2 millennia. The pathway beneath your feet changes texture now, from the smooth limestone blocks of the formal areas to smaller stones, rounded river pebbles that massage your feet with each step. These pebbles, gathered from the seasonal streams that flow down from the Zagros Mountains, were laid by Persian gardeners who understood that walking should be not just transportation, but meditation, not just movement, but mindfulness, not just going from one place to another, but experiencing fully each moment of the journey. The sound of your footsteps on these rounded stones creates a soft percussion, a gentle rhythm that harmonizes with the ambient music of the garden, the trickle of water, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of birds exploring the morning air. This symphony of natural sounds was carefully orchestrated by the designers of these gardens, who knew that the human spirit responds to harmony, finds peace in patterns, discovers healing in the subtle rhythms that connect all living things. To your left, a series of terraced gardens descends gently toward a larger pool, its surface reflecting the deep blue of the morning sky. These terraces demonstrate the Persian mastery of hydraulic engineering, each level perfectly calculated to allow water to flow from one to the next, creating a cascade of small waterfalls that fill the air with negative ions, with the sound of moving water, with the sight of light dancing on liquid surfaces, all of which work together to create an environment that soothes the nervous system, that encourages the production of endorphins, that helps the mind settle into the calm alertness that is the natural state of human consciousness when not disturbed by stress, by hurry, by the artificial urgencies of modern existence. The engineering that created these terraces represents centuries of accumulated wisdom, knowledge passed down from master to apprentice, from father to son, from generation to generation of craftsmen, who understood that their work was not just about moving water from one place to another, but about creating conditions where human beings could experience their own deepest nature, their connection to the sources of peace and joy that lie always available beneath the surface of ordinary awareness. Each terrace is planted differently, demonstrating the Persian understanding of microclimates, of the subtle differences in soil, in drainage, in exposure to sun and wind that allow different plants to flourish in their ideal conditions. On the highest terrace, where the soil drains quickly and the sun shines most directly, grow herbs that love warmth and good drainage: lavender, rosemary, thyme. Their fragrant oils, concentrated by the intensity of mountain light and the careful management of water. As you descend, the terraces become more lush, more verdant, hosting plants that prefer more moisture, more shade, more protection from the sometimes harsh winds that sweep across the Iranian plateau. Here grow the roses for which Persian gardens are famous, not the hybrid varieties of modern cultivation, but the ancient species roses, whose fragrances carry the concentrated essence of centuries of patient selection, of careful breeding, of love expressed through the slow work of improving, of beautifying, of creating varieties that please not just the eye, but the soul. The roses here bloom in shades that seem to capture light, to hold it, to release it slowly like a gentle blessing. Deep crimsons that remind you of wine, of rubies, of the blood that flows through living veins, carrying life to every cell. Soft pinks that echo the colors of dawn, of new life, of the tender affection that connects all beings in the great web of existence. Pure whites that reflect the clean light of understanding, of truth, of the clarity that comes when the mind is still and the heart is open. Persian poets have compared roses to every beautiful thing, to lips, to cheeks, to the blush of modesty, to the flowering of love, but walking among these ancient roses, breathing their concentrated perfume, seeing how they grow with such natural grace in this setting of stone and water and sky, you understand that they need no comparison. They are themselves the standard, the original, the archetype from which all other beauty takes its meaning. A Persian robin lands on the pathway just ahead of you, its breast bright orange in the morning light, its dark eyes alert but unafraid. For a moment, you stand perfectly still, and the bird does too, creating one of those perfect moments of connection that remind you that you are not separate from the life around you. Not an observer looking at nature from outside, but a participant, a member of the great community of living beings that includes not just the birds and flowers and trees, but the stones themselves, the water, the air, the light, everything connected in patterns too complex and beautiful for the mind to grasp, but simple enough for the heart to feel. The robin tilts its head, seems to study you with the same curiosity with which you regard it, then hops a few steps closer, as if recognizing something familiar, something trustworthy, something that belongs here as much as the ancient cypress trees, as much as the roses, as much as the stones laid down by Persian craftsmen in the time of Cyrus the Great. This recognition, is acceptance by the wild creatures that make their home here, is one of the signs that you have entered fully into the spirit of the garden, that you have left behind the restless energy of the outer world and embraced the patient stillness that allows true peace to emerge. After a long moment, the robin spreads its wings and flies toward the largest of the pools, where other birds have gathered to drink and bathe in the clear mountain water. You follow at a respectful distance, walking even more slowly now, allowing your awareness to expand, to take in not just what is directly in front of you, but the whole environment, the way the light falls through the leaves, the way the shadows shift and change, the way each element of the garden contributes to the overall harmony without losing its individual character, its particular gift to the whole. The pool, when you reach it, takes your breath away with its simple perfection. Rectangular, lined with stones so perfectly fitted that no mortar was needed. Its surface mirror calm, except where small springs bubble up from the depths, creating gentle currents that keep the water fresh, keep it alive, keep it moving in the slow circulation that prevents stagnation, while maintaining the essential stillness that allows the surface to reflect sky, clouds, the faces of those who come to its edge seeking refreshment, seeking the peace that comes from looking into still water, from seeing one's own reflection merge with the reflection of heaven. The pool is perhaps 20 feet long, 10 feet wide, lined with the same limestone from which the tomb of Cyrus was carved. Each stone shaped by hand, fitted by eye and touch rather than mechanical measurement, creating the subtle irregularities that give handcrafted work its warmth, its humanity, its connection to the living process of creation, rather than the mechanical reproduction of identical forms. Fish move slowly through the clear water. Golden carp, whose ancestors may have been placed here by the original gardeners. Their movements creating gentle ripples that catch and scatter the morning light, that create ever-changing patterns of brightness and shadow on the stone bottom of the pool. Patterns that seem to speak in a visual language older than words, older than human consciousness itself, the language of light and water and reflection that connects all beings to the source from which beauty flows. You kneel beside the pool, cupping the clear water in your hands, feeling its coolness, its purity, its connection to the mountain springs far above, to the snow that fell on distant peaks, to the long journey through stone and soil that brought this water to this perfect resting place. When you drink, the water tastes of minerals, of earth, of the long journey from sky to stone to stream, to this sacred pool where pilgrims have come to refresh themselves for over 2,000 years. The act of drinking this water, of allowing it to become part of your body, creates a physical connection to this place that goes deeper than sight or sound or even touch. You are now literally part of the garden, carrying within you water that has flowed through these channels since before the time of Christ, before the rise of Rome, before the conquest of Alexander. Water that has sustained not just the plants and animals that call this place home, but the human beings who have found here what you are finding now: peace, beauty, connection to something eternal and unchanging, yet ever flowing, ever fresh, ever ready to sustain life in all its myriad forms. Refreshed, you rise and continue your exploration, following a pathway that leads deeper into the garden complex, past groves of fruit trees planted in careful patterns that create both beauty and abundance. Pomegranate trees heavy with fruit, their ruby seeds visible through split rinds, symbols of fertility, of the multiplicity of blessings that flow from patience, from careful tending, from the understanding that the best things in life cannot be hurried, but must be allowed to ripen in their own time. Fig trees, with their broad leaves creating pools of shade, their sweet fruit attracting birds and insects, in a display of the abundance that results when human planning works in harmony with natural systems, when gardens are designed not just for human pleasure, but for the flourishing of all forms of life, when beauty serves not just aesthetic purposes, but ecological ones, creating habitats, supporting biodiversity, demonstrating that luxury and sustainability are not opposites, but partners in the dance of conscious creation. Apple trees, their fruit still green but promising the sweetness that will come with autumn, reminding you that every season has its gifts, its particular beauty, its essential role in the larger cycles that sustain life on Earth. The Persian garden celebrates all seasons, plans for all weathers, creates beauty that endures through the inevitable changes that mark the passage of time, that transform but never destroy the essential harmony that underlies all apparent diversity, all surface change, all the endless variations on the theme of existence, expressing itself through countless forms while remaining always, essentially, recognizably, beautifully itself. Between the fruit trees, herbs and flowers grow in seemingly random patterns that reveal themselves, on closer inspection, to follow subtle principles of companion planting, of mutual support, of the kind of cooperation that characterizes healthy ecosystems, healthy communities, healthy souls. Basil grows beside tomatoes, mint beside fruit trees, roses interplanted with lavender and rosemary in combinations that enhance each plant's individual qualities while creating fragrances, colors, textures that please the human senses, that create the kind of beauty that feeds not just the eye, but the spirit, that reminds us that we too are part of nature's patterns, subject to the same laws of growth and harmony that govern all living things. A path branches off to your right, leading toward what appears to be a small pavilion. a structure so perfectly integrated with its surroundings that you almost missed it, so harmonious with the garden that it seems to have grown from the earth rather than been built upon it. This is the Persian genius for architecture, the understanding that buildings should enhance rather than dominate their settings, should create spaces for human activity while honoring the natural environment, should demonstrate mastery through restraint rather than display, through harmony rather than conquest. The pavilion, as you approach it, reveals itself to be a masterpiece of understated elegance. 4 slender columns support a roof that seems to float, that creates shade without creating barriers, that offers shelter while maintaining connection to sky, to breeze, to the sounds and fragrances of the garden. The columns are carved from single blocks of stone, their proportions based on mathematical relationships that please the eye without drawing attention to themselves, that create a sense of rightness, of inevitability, of perfect balance between strength and grace. Between the columns, low walls create definition without enclosure, privacy without isolation, offering surfaces for the display of intricate tilework that demonstrates the Persian mastery of decorative arts. The tiles, each one fired by hand, glazed in colors that echo the natural palette of the garden. Blues, like the sky reflected in still water. Greens, like the heart of leaves. Golds, like sunlight filtered through amber. Create patterns that seem to move, to breathe, to participate in the larger rhythms of light and shadow that animate the entire garden. The patterns in the tilework tell stories without words, geometric designs that speak of the mathematical harmonies that underlie all natural forms, floral motifs that celebrate the beauty of growing things, calligraphic elements that transform written words into visual art, that remind us that in Persian culture the arts were never separate from each other, never divorced from everyday life, never created for their own sake, but always in service of beauty, of harmony, of the elevation of human consciousness toward its highest possibilities. You step into the pavilion, feeling immediately the change in atmosphere, the way the roof creates a sense of enclosure without confinement, the way the open walls frame views of the garden like living paintings, constantly changing as light and shadow shift, as birds move through the air, as leaves dance in the breeze, as water catches and releases the reflections of sky and stone and green growing things. The floor of the pavilion is paved with the same river stones as the pathways, but here they are arranged in intricate patterns, mandalas of stone that please the foot as well as the eye, that create the sense of walking on sacred ground, on surfaces designed not just for utility, but for beauty, not just for getting from one place to another, but for the celebration of each step, each moment of contact between the human body and the earth that supports all life. In the center of the pavilion, a small fountain sends water up in a gentle arc, its sound creating a focus for meditation, a center around which thoughts can orbit, like planets around a sun, finding their natural rhythm, their proper relationship to the stillness that underlies all mental activity, all emotional fluctuation, all the surface movements of consciousness that often distract us from the deeper peace that is our birthright. Our natural state when not disturbed by artificial stresses, by the acceleration of modern life that pulls us away from our connection to natural rhythms, to the slower cycles that govern the movements of stars, of seasons, of the patient processes through which beauty emerges from the raw materials of earth and water and light. You sit beside the fountain, feeling the mist from its gentle spray, hearing the sound of water returning to water, watching the play of light in the droplets that catch the morning sun like tiny prisms, like liquid diamonds celebrating the marriage of earth and sky, of substance and spirit, of the human heart and the natural world that gave it birth, that continues to nurture it with every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of conscious appreciation for the inexhaustible beauty that surrounds us, that includes us, that reminds us always that we are not separate from creation, but part of it, expressions of it, temporary forms through which the eternal creativity of existence explores its own infinite possibilities. The sound of the fountain creates a gentle background, a white noise that helps the mind settle into deeper states of relaxation, of meditation, of the kind of open awareness that allows you to perceive subtleties usually hidden beneath the surface of ordinary attention. This is why Persian gardens always included water, not just for practical purposes, not just for irrigation or cooling, but for this deeper function, this service to the human spirit, this support for the inner work of transformation that happens naturally when we allow ourselves to slow down, to breathe deeply, to remember that we are more than our worries, more than our schedules, more than the endless mental commentary that usually occupies our attention. Sitting here in this pavilion, feeling the gentle mist on your face, listening to the eternal conversation between water and stone, you begin to understand why Persian poets wrote so often about gardens, why they saw in cultivated landscapes metaphors for the soul's journey toward perfection, toward the integration of earth and heaven, toward the harmony that emerges when human intelligence works in partnership with natural wisdom, when ambition serves beauty rather than ego, when power expresses itself through service rather than domination. The Persian garden was always a collaboration between human vision and natural processes, between the architect's plan and the gardener's patience, between the king's resources and the craftsman's skill, between the immediate need for beauty and the long-term commitment to sustainability, between the desire for paradise and the recognition that paradise must be earned through work, through understanding, through the gradual alignment of human will with the deeper patterns that govern growth, that reward patience, that reveal their secrets only to those who approach with humility, with reverence, with the kind of love that seeks not to possess, but to serve, not to dominate, but to harmonize, not to force, but to invite, not to hurry, but to allow. A butterfly lands on the edge of the fountain, its wings translucent in the morning light, creating brief rainbows as sunlight passes through the delicate membranes that allow it to fly. For a moment, the butterfly drinks from the water, its proboscis curled like a tiny spring, extending to touch the surface, to draw into its small body the same water that nourishes the roses, the cypresses, the pomegranates, the herbs, all the living things that call this garden home. Watching the butterfly, you are struck by the democracy of water, by the way this essential element serves all life equally, without regard to size, to importance, to human notions of hierarchy. The same water that once filled the pools of Persian kings, that cooled the air in royal audience halls, that supported the gardens where emperors walked in contemplation. This same water now serves a butterfly no bigger than your thumb, offers the same sustenance, the same gift of life, with the same generosity that characterizes all natural processes when not distorted by human interference, by the artificial scarcities created by greed, by fear, by the illusion of separation that makes us forget our fundamental interconnection with all beings, all elements, all the visible and invisible forces that sustain existence. The butterfly finishes drinking and lifts off. Its flight path seemingly random, but actually following air currents invisible to human perception. Guided by senses we can barely imagine, navigating by landmarks we cannot see, following magnetic fields that connect it to the Earth's own navigation system, demonstrating the intelligence that permeates all natural processes, the wisdom that operates below the threshold of conscious thought, but above the level of mere mechanism. You rise from your seat beside the fountain, feeling refreshed, renewed, ready to continue your exploration of this earthly paradise. The morning is advancing, the light growing stronger, but still gentle, still filtered through leaves, still dancing on water, still creating the constantly changing display of beauty that characterizes the Persian garden at every hour, in every season, under all conditions of weather and light. The pathway leading out of the pavilion branches in several directions, offering choices without creating anxiety, possibilities without overwhelming options. This too is part of Persian garden design, the understanding that freedom is enhanced rather than diminished by structure, that creativity flourishes within limits, that the soul finds peace not in endless choice, but in the presence of good options, of paths that lead toward beauty, toward discovery, toward the kind of experience that nourishes rather than depletes, that adds to rather than subtracts from the essential wholeness that is every human being's birthright. You choose the path that leads toward a grove of ancient olive trees, their gnarled trunks and silvery leaves speaking of centuries of patient growth, of adaptation to the cycles of abundance and scarcity that characterize life in the semi-arid regions where Persian civilization first flourished, where human beings first learned to work with rather than against the limitations of climate and geography, where necessity became the mother not just of invention, but of beauty, of the kind of solutions that solve practical problems while creating aesthetic pleasure, that serve immediate needs while contributing to the long-term health and sustainability of the larger systems of which they are part. The olive grove creates a different atmosphere from the more formal areas of the garden, more wild, more natural, more like the landscape that existed here before human intervention shaped it into paradise. But even here, even in this seemingly natural environment, you can see evidence of careful management, of selective pruning that enhances the tree's natural grace, of spacing that allows each tree room to reach its full potential, while creating opportunities for understory plants to flourish in the filtered shade beneath the canopy. The ground beneath the olive trees is carpeted with a mixture of fallen leaves and low-growing plants, herbs and grasses that create a living mulch, that protect the soil from erosion, that provide habitat for insects and small animals, that demonstrate the Persian understanding of succession, of the way natural systems evolve over time when allowed to follow their own patterns of development, while receiving the kind of gentle guidance that enhances rather than forces, that works with natural processes rather than against them. Walking through the grove, you notice how the light filters through the leaves, creating patterns of brightness and shadow that shift constantly as branches move in the gentle breeze. As the sun moves across the sky, as your own position changes with each step. This play of light and shadow was one of the elements most carefully considered by Persian garden designers, who understood that static beauty, however perfect, eventually becomes boring, that the soul craves movement, change, the kind of dynamic equilibrium that characterizes all healthy systems, all living processes, all genuine works of art. The olive trees here are old, some perhaps as old as the garden itself. Their trunks thick with the accumulated growth of centuries, their bark carved with the natural sculptures created by time, by weather, by the patient process of adaptation that allows living things to thrive, not by resisting change, but by embracing it, by finding ways to bend without breaking, to endure without becoming rigid, to maintain essential identity while allowing for endless variation, endless growth, endless response to the changing conditions that characterize life in time. One of the trees has grown around a stone, incorporating it so completely into its trunk that tree and stone have become one, demonstrating nature's ability to transform obstacles into opportunities, limitations into sources of strength, problems into occasions for creative adaptation. This, too, was part of Persian wisdom, the understanding that resistance creates suffering, that acceptance creates peace, that the path to paradise leads not around difficulties, but through them, not by avoiding challenges, but by meeting them with grace, with patience, with the kind of intelligent flexibility that finds solutions where others see only problems. You pause beneath this tree, this living example of adaptation and integration, feeling the coolness of its shade, the solidity of its presence, the sense of time made visible in its growth rings, in its seasonal cycles of leafing and dormancy, in its steady accumulation of mass and height and spread, all accomplished without hurry, without strain, without the kind of forcing that characterizes so much human activity, so much human ambition, so much of the restless energy that prevents us from settling into the natural rhythms that would allow our own deepest potentials to unfold. Leaning against the trunk, you feel connected to something larger than yourself, to the long chain of seasons that brought this tree to its present magnificence. to the countless cycles of rain and drought, of heat and cold, of abundance and scarcity that tested and strengthened and shaped this living being into its current form. You feel connected too to all the human beings who have rested in this same shade, who have found in this same presence the peace that comes from contact with something that has endured, that has grown slowly and steadily toward its own perfection, that offers without asking, that gives without depleting itself, that demonstrates through its very existence the possibility of living in harmony with the larger patterns that govern all existence. The morning breeze carries new fragrances now. The dusty sweetness of olive leaves, the green scent of grass growing in shade, the faint perfume of distant roses mingling with the earthier smells of compost, of soil rich with organic matter, of the decomposition and renewal that characterize healthy ecosystems, healthy gardens, healthy lives that embrace the full cycle of growth and rest, of blooming and dormancy, of the necessary periods of apparent inactivity that precede and make possible the more visible expressions of creativity and productivity. A small lizard appears on the trunk of the tree, its movements quick but not frantic, alert but not anxious, demonstrating the kind of relaxed awareness that allows wild creatures to respond instantly to opportunities and threats, while maintaining the essential calmness that conserves energy, that allows for the long-term survival that comes not from constant vigilance, but from the ability to rest completely when resting is appropriate, to move decisively when action is called for, to live fully in each moment without losing touch with the larger patterns that provide context, that give meaning to individual actions, that connect each life to the vast web of relationships that sustain all existence. The lizard seems unafraid of your presence, accepting you as part of the environment, as another creature seeking shade, seeking rest, seeking the peace that this ancient grove offers to all who enter it with respect, with quietness, with the kind of non-demanding presence that allows wild things to remain wild, while acknowledging the kinship that connects all forms of life, all expressions of the creativity that manifests itself through countless forms, while remaining always, essentially, recognizably, beautifully itself. After a few moments, the lizard moves on, disappearing into the bark patterns where its coloring makes it nearly invisible, demonstrating another aspect of natural wisdom, the understanding that security comes not from armor, not from weapons, not from domination, but from harmony, from blending, from the kind of integration that makes survival effortless, because it aligns individual needs with environmental opportunities, individual gifts with collective requirements, personal fulfillment with service to the larger whole, of which every being is an inseparable part. You push yourself away from the tree, refreshed by this brief communion with ancient life, with patient growth, with the kind of existence that unfolds according to its own inner rhythms rather than external pressures, that achieves greatness through consistency rather than drama, through persistence rather than force, through the accumulation of countless small acts of growth, of adaptation, of the kind of incremental progress that builds cathedrals, that creates gardens, that transforms desert into paradise through the patient application of human intelligence to natural processes. The path leads you out of the olive grove toward another section of the garden where the sound of moving water grows stronger, where the air carries the freshness that always accompanies streams, rivers, any place where water flows over stone, through earth, toward its eternal destination in the sea that connects all lands, all peoples, all the separate watersheds that seem distinct but are actually parts of a single system, a single circulation that connects mountain springs to ocean depths, that demonstrates on a planetary scale the same principles of flow and circulation and renewal that characterize healthy gardens, healthy communities, healthy souls. The source of the sound reveals itself as you round a bend in the path, a stream, not large but steady, flowing from a spring hidden among rocks higher up the slope, carrying mountain water down through carefully constructed channels toward the pools and fountains and irrigation systems that bring life to every corner of the garden. This stream is both natural and artificial, its source entirely natural, but its course shaped by human intelligence, directed by Persian engineers who understood that the greatest achievements come not from opposing natural forces, but from cooperating with them, from understanding their patterns and working within their limitations to create possibilities that serve both human needs and natural systems. The stream bed is lined with stones, fitted carefully but not rigidly, allowing water to flow smoothly while creating opportunities for plants to root in the spaces between stones, for insects to find shelter, for small fish to hide from predators, for the complex communities of microorganisms that keep water healthy, that break down organic matter and cycle nutrients, and perform the countless invisible functions that maintain the balance necessary for life to flourish in all its interdependent forms. Small bridges cross the stream at intervals, each one different, each one perfectly suited to its location, its function, its contribution to the overall harmony of the garden. Some are simple stone slabs, functional and beautiful in their simplicity, their honest acknowledgement of their purpose. Others are more elaborate, carved with decorative elements that transform utilitarian structures into works of art, into celebrations of the human impulse to beautify, to add grace to necessity, to find in every functional requirement an opportunity for creative expression, for the kind of craftsmanship that serves not just practical needs, but the deeper human requirement for beauty, for meaning, for connection to something larger than mere survival. You cross one of the simpler bridges, feeling the solid stone beneath your feet, hearing the water flow beneath you, experiencing the satisfaction that comes from crossing from one side to another, from the movement that is both literal and symbolic, both physical and metaphorical, both a simple change of location and a representation of all the transitions that mark human life, all the passages from one state to another, all the crossings that take us from where we were to where we are becoming, from what we knew to what we are learning, from who we thought we were to who we are discovering ourselves to be. On the far side of the stream, the garden takes on a different character, more intimate, more enclosed, more like the private spaces where Persian families gathered for quiet conversation, for the sharing of meals, for the kind of unhurried social interaction that builds relationships slowly, naturally, without the artificial pressures that characterize so much contemporary social life, without the need to impress or compete or perform, with the kind of authentic presence that emerges when people feel safe, accepted, free to be themselves without pretense or defense. Here the pathways are narrower, more winding, creating a sense of discovery, of gentle surprise around each curve, each corner, each passage between the plantings that screen one area from another, while maintaining the overall unity that connects every part of the garden to every other part, that provides spaces for solitude and spaces for sharing, that honors the human need for both independence and connection. The plants here are chosen for their fragrances as much as their visual beauty. Jasmine and honeysuckle climbing over arbors, releasing their perfumes most strongly in the evening, when families would gather for the long conversations that build understanding, that create the bonds of affection and respect that hold communities together across generations, across the inevitable changes that mark the passage of time, across the challenges that test but ultimately strengthen the connections between people who share values, who share commitment to beauty, who share understanding that the best things in life are not acquired but cultivated, not consumed but created, not possessed but participated in, through the kind of active appreciation that makes us partners in the ongoing creation of beauty, of harmony, of the conditions that allow all beings to flourish. Mint grows along the edges of the pathways, releasing its sharp, clean fragrance when brushed by passing feet, by the hem of robes, by the natural movements of people who walk slowly enough to appreciate the sensory gifts that surround them, who are present enough to receive the offerings that nature makes to those who approach with attention, with gratitude, with the kind of openness that transforms every step into an opportunity for wonder, every breath into an occasion for thanksgiving, every moment into a chance to participate consciously in the great celebration of existence that continues always, everywhere, in forms too numerous to count, but simple enough to appreciate, one breath at a time, one step at a time, one moment of awareness at a time. The morning sun is higher now, its light more direct, its warmth more pronounced, but still gentle, still filtered through the careful arrangement of trees and vines and trellises that create the perfect balance of sun and shade, of warmth and coolness, of light and protection that characterizes the Persian garden at every hour, in every season, under all the varying conditions that mark the passage of days, of months, of years, of centuries, demonstrating the kind of design that transcends fashion, that remains beautiful not because it never changes, but because it changes gracefully, naturally, in response to the deeper rhythms that govern all healthy growth, all sustainable beauty, all genuine achievements of human creativity, working in partnership with natural wisdom. And as this second chapter of your day in the gardens of Pasargadae draws toward its gentle conclusion, you find yourself settling even more deeply into the rhythm of this sacred place, feeling your breathing slow to match the patient exhalation of leaves releasing oxygen into the morning air, feeling your heartbeat synchronize with the pulse of water flowing through ancient channels, feeling your awareness expand to embrace not just this moment, but all moments, not just this garden, but all gardens, not just this peace, but the eternal peace that underlies all apparent conflict, all surface disturbance, all the temporary disruptions that sometimes make us forget the fundamental harmony that connects all beings, all places, all times in the great dance of existence, expressing itself through infinite forms while remaining always, essentially, beautifully, peacefully itself. The water continues to flow. The birds continue to sing. The flowers continue to release their fragrances into the warming air. And you, walking slowly along pathways laid down by Persian hands, breathing air perfumed by gardens planted with Persian wisdom, feeling beneath your feet the same earth that has supported paradise for over 2 millennia. You continue your journey deeper into this realm of beauty, deeper into this sanctuary of peace, deeper into the eternal garden where souls find rest, where hearts discover their true home, where the morning of creation continues forever, in perfect light, in perfect harmony, in the perfect stillness that contains all movement, the perfect silence that gives birth to all sound, the perfect peace that embraces all the apparent chaos of temporal existence and reveals it to be not chaos at all, but the visible expression of a love too vast for understanding, too beautiful for description, too present to be grasped, but too obvious to be missed by those who walk slowly enough, breathe deeply enough, love completely enough to recognize paradise when they find themselves, as you find yourself now. Already there, already home, already at peace in the garden that exists not only here, in this ancient place, but everywhere the human heart opens to receive the beauty that surrounds it always, that includes it always, that welcomes it always into the eternal morning, the endless spring, the everlasting garden of existence itself. Chapter 3. Echoes of the Ancients. You find yourself standing in the heart of Pasargadae, where silence speaks of ancient glories. The morning light has given way to the gentle warmth of midday sun, and the shadows grow shorter beneath the weathered stones of Cyrus the Great's capital. Here, in this sacred place, you feel the presence of 25 centuries. The ruins speak softly to those who know how to listen. You place your hand against a massive limestone block, worn smooth by wind and rain and time itself. This stone, you realize, was quarried from the mountains that still rise, blue and distant on the horizon. Persian craftsmen, skilled in the arts, learned from Lydians and Babylonians and Egyptians, shaped these blocks with bronze tools and wooden mallets and the patient wisdom of generations. The touch of the stone is cool beneath your palm. You can almost feel the hands of those ancient builders who lifted these massive blocks into place. Each stone weighs several tons, yet they fit together with such precision that even today no mortar holds them in their eternal embrace. You walk slowly around the foundation of what scholars call the Tale Tact, the throne hill. Here, Cyrus the Great built his audience hall, his Apadana, where ambassadors from distant lands would come, bearing gifts and seeking the favor of the King of Kings. The Persian Empire, at its height, stretched from the Indus River in the east to the Mediterranean in the west, from the Black Sea in the north to the deserts of Arabia in the south. It was the largest empire the world had ever seen, and from this very spot where you now stand, Cyrus governed with wisdom and tolerance that amazed his contemporaries. You close your eyes and imagine the great hall as it once stood, tall columns, carved from single blocks of limestone, rose toward a cedar roof, brought from the forests of Lebanon. Between the columns hung tapestries woven with threads of gold and silver, depicting the royal hunts and the sacred fire ceremonies of the Zoroastrian faith. The Zoroastrian religion, taught by the prophet Zarathustra, spoke of the eternal struggle between light and darkness, between Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, and Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit. But here, in Pasargadae, under the warm Persian sun, only light seems to dwell among these ancient stones. You continue walking, your bare feet, finding the worn stone pathways that connected the various buildings of the royal complex. These paths were designed following the Persian concept of paradise, the paradisa, which meant literally a walled garden, a place of beauty and peace, protected from the chaos of the outside world. The word paradise itself comes from this ancient Persian concept. When the Greeks encountered Persian gardens, they borrowed the word as paradisos, and from there it entered Latin and eventually English. Every time someone speaks of paradise today, they echo the voice of ancient Persia and the gardens you now slowly, peacefully explore. Ahead of you rises the most famous structure in all Pasargadae, the tomb of Cyrus the Great himself. This simple, six-stepped stone pyramid, topped with a small chamber, has stood here for more than 2,500 years, weathering earthquakes and invasions, and the endless passage of time. As you approach the tomb, you feel a profound sense of reverence. This is not merely a monument to a king, but a testament to a man who changed the course of human history through his wisdom and compassion. Alexander the Great, when he conquered the Persian Empire, wept at this very spot, ordering that the tomb be restored and protected for all time. The chamber atop the steps once held the golden sarcophagus of Cyrus, surrounded by precious carpets and royal robes and vessels of gold and silver. An inscription, now lost to time, once proclaimed, "O man, whoever you are and wherever you come from, for I know you will come. I am Cyrus, who won the Persians their empire. Do not, therefore, grudge me this bit of earth that covers my remains." You sit quietly on one of the lower steps, feeling the warmth of the ancient stone beneath you. Here, Cyrus, the shepherd king who united the Persian tribes and built the greatest empire of the ancient world, rests in eternal peace. Cyrus was born around 600 BCE in the mountainous region of Persis, now called Fars province in southern Iran. His grandfather, Astyages, was king of the Medes, the people who controlled much of Iran before the rise of the Persians. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, Astyages had a dream that his daughter's son would overthrow his kingdom. When Cyrus was born, Astyages ordered him to be killed, but the infant was secretly raised by a shepherd in the mountains. This story, whether true or legend, speaks to the ancient belief that great leaders often rise from humble beginnings, shaped by the harsh beauty of nature itself. As a young man, Cyrus united the Persian tribes and revolted against his grandfather's rule. The Median nobles betrayed Astyages and handed him over to his grandson. But Cyrus, showing the mercy that would characterize his entire reign, treated his grandfather with respect and kindness until the old king's natural death. You lean back against the warm stone, feeling the sun on your face and thinking of this remarkable man's life achievements. Unlike other conquerors of his time, Cyrus did not destroy the cultures he conquered. When Cyrus conquered Babylon in 539 BCE, he freed the Jewish exiles who had been enslaved there for generations. He allowed them to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, earning himself the title of Messiah, Anointed One in the Hebrew Bible. The Cyrus cylinder discovered by archaeologists proclaims his policy of religious tolerance and cultural respect. This clay cylinder, sometimes called the first charter of human rights, remains a symbol of peace and unity. Of human rights, declares that all peoples should be free to worship their own gods in their own way. It states that no one should be enslaved against their will, and that displaced peoples should be allowed to return to their homelands. These were revolutionary ideas in the 6th century BCE, and they echo still in our modern concepts of freedom and dignity. You rise slowly from the steps and walk around the tomb, studying its simple, elegant construction. The Persian architects rejected the elaborate decorations favored by other cultures, instead choosing a style of noble simplicity that spoke of confidence and eternal strength. Each step of the tomb represents one of the 7 levels of heaven in Zoroastrian cosmology. The 7th step, the chamber itself, represents the final resting place of the righteous soul in the presence of Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord who created all good things in the world. The stone used in the construction is a local limestone quarried from the hills that surround Pasargadae. This choice was deliberate. Cyrus wanted his tomb to be part of the landscape he loved, growing from the very earth of Persia, like the ancient cypress trees that still whisper in the wind around his final resting place. As you continue your slow circumnavigation of the tomb, you notice small flowers growing in the cracks between the stones. These are wild tulips, descendants, perhaps of the flowers that bloomed here when Cyrus himself walked these paths, planning his gardens and dreaming of a world where all peoples could live in peace and prosperity. Tulip is a Persian flower, its name derived from the Persian word dalband, meaning turban, because of the flower's distinctive shape. Persian poets for centuries have praised the tulip's beauty, comparing its red petals to the beloved's lips, or to drops of martyrs' blood shed in the cause of righteousness. You kneel gently beside one of these wild tulips and inhale its subtle fragrance. The scent is delicate, almost ethereal, like a memory of spring, preserved in stone and time. Around you, the ancient stones hold the warmth of the midday sun, creating small pockets of perfect temperature where these flowers can thrive century after century. Standing again, you notice other plants growing among the ruins. There are wild roses, their ancestors, brought from the mountains of Damascus and the valleys of Shiraz by Persian gardeners who understood that paradise must include the beauty and fragrance of flowers. These roses bloom in cycles throughout the growing season, their petals falling like gentle rain onto the ancient pathways. The Persian rose, Rosa gallica, var. Persica, has been cultivated in Iran for over 3,000 years. Persian alchemists and physicians like Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, distilled rose water and rose oil for use in medicine and perfumery. Even today, the city of Kashan in central Iran is famous for its rose cultivation, continuing a tradition that began here in these ancient gardens. You walk toward a cluster of broken columns that once supported the roof of a smaller building, perhaps a private residence or a shrine to the sacred fire that burned continuously in honor of Ahura Mazda. The columns are carved with incredible precision, their surfaces decorated with intricate patterns of palmettes and rosettes that seem to dance in the shifting shadows. These decorations reflect the timeless beauty of Persian aesthetics and the reverence for nature's harmony. As you stand amidst these ancient stones, imagine the soft whispers of Sufi poets and the gentle aroma of freshly brewed Persian tea. Here, in this space, time slows, and you feel a profound sense of peace. The Persian mastery of stone carving, learned from contact with Greek artisans and Egyptian craftsmen, but transformed by Persian aesthetic sensibilities into something uniquely beautiful and harmonious. The patterns seem to flow like water or wind across the stone, creating a sense of movement even in these static ruins. You sit in the shade of one of these fallen columns and contemplate the extraordinary cultural synthesis that Cyrus and his successors achieved. The Persian Empire was not simply a military conquest, but a civilization that brought together the wisdom and artistry of dozens of different peoples, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. From the Babylonians, the Persians learned astronomy and mathematics. From the Egyptians, they learned medicine, and monumental architecture. From the Greeks, they learned sculpture and philosophy. From the Indians, they learned new forms of spirituality and artistic expression. And they gave back to all these peoples the peace and security that allowed their cultures to flourish. The wind stirs gently through the ruins, carrying with it the fragrance of wild thyme and rosemary, herbs that have grown here since ancient times. These plants were used by Persian cooks and physicians. Thyme for its antiseptic properties, rosemary for memory and mental clarity. Even the weeds that grow here connect you to the daily life of ancient Persians. You close your eyes and listen to the sounds of this ancient place. There is the gentle whisper of wind through stone, the distant call of a falcon circling overhead, the soft trickle of water from a spring that still flows after 25 centuries. These are the same sounds that Cyrus heard when he walked here in contemplation, planning his next campaign, or simply enjoying the peace of his gardens. The concept of the Persian garden, the Chaharbagh, or four-part garden, influenced garden design throughout the world. From Spain to India, wherever Persian culture spread, gardens were designed as earthly representations of paradise, with 4 rivers flowing from a central source, dividing the garden into 4 quadrants, representing the 4 directions and the harmony of the universe. Here in Pasargadae, you can still trace the outlines of these ancient garden beds, now overgrown with wild grasses and flowers, but still retaining their geometric perfection. The Persians believed that geometry was the language of divine creation, and that by creating geometric patterns in their gardens, they were participating in the ongoing creation of the world. You rise and rest. Walk slowly along one of these ancient garden paths, imagining it as it once was, lined with pomegranate trees and flowering almonds, with small channels of clear water running alongside, carrying the precious water from the Qanat system that brought mountain springs to these arid plains. You wake beneath starlit skies, a gentle breeze whispering through the trees. The aroma of blooming flowers fills the air. Soft footsteps on cool stone pathways leading to a tranquil pool where water gently flows, reflecting the moonlight. In the distance, the soft hum of a ney, a Persian flute, mingles with the gentle rustling of the garden. You feel the warmth of the sun's rays on your skin, a serene moment to reflect on the beauty of this peaceful world, a place where every flower, every stone tells a story of love and wisdom. Let your mind drift on this tranquil journey. After more than positioned to take advantage of cooling breezes and to provide the most beautiful views of mountains, gardens, and architectural monuments. The Persian love of gardens was deeply connected to their spiritual beliefs. Zoroastrianism taught that the material world was good, created by Ahura Mazda as a place of beauty and joy. This positive attitude toward the physical world contrasted sharply with many other religions of the time, which saw the material world as corrupt or evil. For Persians, creating beauty in the world through gardens, architecture, poetry, and music was a form of worship, a way of participating in divine creation. This philosophy encouraged the artistic achievements that made Persian civilization famous throughout the ancient world, and that continue to inspire artists and gardeners today. You find yourself at the base of a small hill, where archaeologists have uncovered the foundations of what may have been a fire temple, the most sacred type of building in Zoroastrian architecture. Here, a sacred fire would have burned continuously, tended by priests who had dedicated their lives to the service of Ahura Mazda. The sacred fire in Zoroastrianism represents the light of divine wisdom and truth. It is not worshipped itself, but serves as a focal point for meditation and prayer, a reminder of the divine light that illuminates all creation. The fire is fed with sandalwood and frankincense, creating a fragrant smoke that carries prayers upward to heaven, sitting quietly on the foundation stones. You can almost sense the presence of those ancient priests, moving slowly and reverently through their daily rituals, adding fuel to the sacred flame, reciting the ancient prayers in Avestan, the sacred language of Zoroastrianism, greeting the dawn with gratitude for another day of light and life. The Avestan language is closely related to Sanskrit, the sacred language of Hindu texts, reflecting the common ancestry of the Persian and Indian peoples. Both languages preserve ancient Indo-European words and concepts that provide insights into the spiritual and cultural beliefs of our distant ancestors. Many of the hymns and prayers of Zoroastrianism, the Gathas, are attributed to Zarathustra himself and may be among the oldest religious texts still in use today. These poetic prayers speak of the struggle between good and evil, the importance of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, and the ultimate triumph of light over darkness. As you sit in contemplation, a small bird lands nearby, a hoopoe, with its distinctive crested head and striped wings. In Persian literature, the hoopoe is a symbol of wisdom and spiritual guidance, most famously in the great mystical poem by the Sufi poet Attar of Nishapur. In Attar's poem, the hoopoe leads other birds on a spiritual journey to find the Simurgh, the king of birds, who represents the divine nature within each soul. The journey is long and difficult, and many birds fall by the wayside, but those who persevere discover that they themselves are the Simurgh they sought. The hoopoe regards you calmly with its bright, intelligent eyes, then flies away toward the tomb of Cyrus, its wings catching the golden sunlight. You watch it go, feeling a sense of blessing and connection to the long tradition of Persian spirituality and wisdom that flows like an underground river through the centuries. You rise, and continue your slow exploration of the tomb. Ruins, coming to what archaeologists call Palace P, the remains of what may have been Cyrus's private residence. Here the foundations reveal a complex of rooms, arranged around courtyards, with evidence of sophisticated heating and cooling systems that made life comfortable, even in the extreme temperatures of the Iranian plateau. The walls of these rooms were once covered with glazed brick reliefs, depicting scenes from Persian mythology and history. Fragments found by archaeologists show images of the sacred bull that represents the earth, winged lions that symbolize royal power, and the famous Persian gardens with their stylized trees and flowing streams. These decorations served not only aesthetic purposes, but also educational ones. In an age before widespread literacy, visual images were the primary way of transmitting cultural values and historical knowledge. A visitor to the palace could read the story of Persian civilization in the images that surrounded them. The Persian artistic tradition influenced cultures from Greece to India and from Central Asia to North Africa. Persian carpets, with their intricate patterns and symbolic imagery, became prized possessions throughout the ancient world. Persian miniature painting developed into one of the world's great artistic traditions, influencing Islamic art from Spain to Indonesia. You walk through slowly, no rush and silence, the foundations of what was once a great hall where Cyrus would have received ambassadors and vassal kings from throughout his vast empire. The hall was designed to impress visitors with the power and sophistication of Persian civilization, but also to make them feel welcome and respected. Unlike the intimidating throne rooms of other ancient kings, Persian audience halls were designed as places of dialogue and negotiation. Cyrus and his successors preferred to rule through persuasion and mutual benefit, rather than through fear and oppression. This approach helped create a remarkably stable empire that lasted for more than 2 centuries. The floor of the hall was made of heavy density, scented with pine and brass touch, staring out through the floor tiles, paved with polished limestone slabs, some of which still lie in place, worn smooth by the footsteps of countless ancient visitors. Standing on these stones, you can imagine the processions of tribute bearers from distant provinces, carrying gold from Sardis, ivory from Africa, spices from India, and silk from India. The mysterious lands beyond the Oxus River. The Persian Empire was the first truly global economy, connecting trade routes that stretched from China to Egypt. Persian gold coins, called darics after Darius the Great, became the standard currency for international trade. The weight and purity of these coins were guaranteed by the royal seal, making them accepted everywhere in the world. World. At what remains of a window opening that once looked out over the royal gardens. The view from here would have encompassed the entire paradise that Cyrus created, a vision of earthly perfection that reflected his understanding of divine order and harmony. Time moves differently here in Pasargadae. The daily rhythms of sunrise and sunset, the seasonal cycles of growth and dormancy, the longer rhythms of centuries and millennia, all blend together in a sense of eternal presence. The stones themselves seem to pulse gently with the accumulated memory of all the lives that have touched them. You think of the countless people who have touched them, walked these paths before you. Cyrus himself pacing thoughtfully as he planned his next campaign or contemplated the governance of his vast empire. Persian nobles discussing matters of state or poetry as they strolled through the gardens. Priests making their way to the fire temple for evening prayers. Later came the soldiers of Alexander, who wept at the neglect they found here and ordered the restoration of Cyrus's tomb. Then the Parthians and Sassanids, who claimed inheritance from the Achaemenid kings and came here to pay homage to their great predecessor. In Islamic times, the site was known as the tomb of Solomon's mother, reflecting the confusion of local tradition, but also the continuing reverence for this holy place. Sufi mystics came here for meditation and retreat, finding in the ancient stones a reflection of the eternal truths they sought. Europeans, travelers in the 18th and 19th centuries, rediscovered Pasargadae and identified it correctly as the capital of Cyrus the Great. Their accounts sparked renewed interest in Persian history and culture, leading eventually to the archaeological investigations that have revealed so much about this remarkable civilization. Today, scholars and pilgrims from around the world continue to come to Pasargadae, each bringing their own questions and seeking their own answers in the dialogue between past and present that these ruins make possible. You continue your contemplative walk, moving toward the remains of what archaeologists call the gatehouse, a fortified entrance to the royal precinct. Even in ruins, this structure conveys a sense of dignity and controlled power. The Persian approach to architecture emphasized harmony between human constructions and the natural landscape rather than domination over nature. The stones of the gatehouse are precisely fitted without mortar, a technique that allowed the structure to flex slightly during earthquakes rather than collapsing. This practical wisdom, combined with aesthetic beauty, characterizes much of Persian architecture and helps explain why so many Persian buildings have survived for millennia. Near the gatehouse, you notice the remains of what may have been a small shrine or altar where travelers entering the royal precinct could pause for a moment of prayer or reflection. The Persian understanding of sacred space was subtle and pervasive, not limited to formal temples, but extending to every aspect of the built environment. This integration of the sacred and the world, secular, reflected the Zoroastrian belief that all of creation is holy and that human activities should honor and celebrate this holiness. Work was not separated from worship. Art was not separated from prayer. And daily life was understood as a continuous opportunity for spiritual growth and service. You sit on a fallen stone and observe the way the light plays across the ruins, highlighting the texture of weathered limestone and creating pools of shadow where small plants find shelter from the intensity of the Persian sun. The interplay of light and shadow, permanence and change, human ambition and natural process creates a visual meditation on the nature of existence itself. In the distance, you can see the Zagros Mountains, their peaks still touched with snow, even in this warm season. These mountains provided the building stone for Pasargadae, and also the water that made life possible on these arid plains. The ancient Persians understood their dependence on the natural world, and their architecture and city planning reflected this understanding. The Qanat system that brought water to Pasargadae was more than just an engineering achievement. It was a philosophical statement about the relationship between human ingenuity and natural resources. Rather than trying to dominate or exploit nature, Persian engineers worked with natural resources, processes to create sustainable solutions that could function for centuries without depleting their sources. This approach to environmental stewardship was deeply rooted in Zoroastrian theology, which taught that humans are partners with Ahura Mazda in the ongoing creation and perfection of the world. Pollution, waste, and environmental destruction were considered not just practical problems, but spiritual failures, violations of the sacred trust between humanity and the divine. As you sit in a calm gathering serenely in the town, there are soft pastures, sounds, and teas, whispering wind, peppermint, and tingling, flickering candles, scented pinwheel. Waking up and sitting next to you in the silence of the gathering. In the center, there is a breeze, a sound wave, melancholy. Walking to the barn with natural water, and you find the ground beneath you, a soft, walking, calming, whispering silence. Calm your nerves and stretch out the center. And Zen, take a deep breath. Inhale. Their smiling face rises, and your eyes are danced in front of you as you make your way and pour out a savory cup of tea. Became common in Europe. The Persian physician Al-Razi, known in the West as Razes, made fundamental contributions to medicine, including the first clinical description of smallpox and measles. Ibn Sina, known as Avicenna, wrote medical texts that were used in European universities for centuries. These scholars built on traditional Persian knowledge of herbs and healing that stretches back to the time of Cyrus and beyond. You breathe deeply of the herb-scented air, feeling a connection to this ancient tradition of learning and discovery. The pursuit of knowledge was highly valued in Persian culture, not as abstract intellectual exercise, but as practical wisdom that could improve human life and bring people closer to the divine truth. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad during the Islamic Golden Age was built on Persian foundations, both literal and metaphorical. Persian scholars, translators, and administrators played crucial roles in preserving and transmitting Greek scientific and philosophical texts, creating the conditions for the great flowering of Islamic civilization. Standing, again, you walk toward another cluster of ruins. The remains of what may have been a library or scribal school, where young Persians learned to read and write in the various languages of the empire. Literacy in the Persian Empire was not limited to a small elite, but was encouraged among all social classes as a means of participating in the larger culture. The world was built with Greek, sacred, peaceful language. Persian Empire was administered in multiple languages, including Old Persian, Elamite, and Aramaic, which served as the lingua franca for official communication. This multilingual approach reflected the Persian respect for cultural diversity and their practical understanding that effective governance required communication in languages that local populations could understand. The famous Behistun inscription carved into a cliff face in western Iran by order of Darius the Great was written in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian cuneiform, making it accessible to educated people throughout the empire. This inscription, which recounts Darius's rise to power and his early victories, served as the Rosetta Stone for deciphering cuneiform script in the 19th century. You pause among these ruins, imagining the quiet concentration of ancient scribes bent over their clay tablets and papyrus scrolls, carefully forming the wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform or the flowing lines of Aramaic script. These scribes were the unsung heroes of ancient civilization, preserving and transmitting the knowledge that made complex societies possible. The library at Persepolis, the ceremonial capital built by Darius and his successors, contained thousands of tablets and scrolls, covering subjects from astronomy and mathematics to poetry and religious texts. Much of this library was destroyed when Alexander burned Persepolis in 330 BCE, representing one of the great cultural losses in human history. But here, in Pasargadae, the older and more peaceful capital, the destruction was less complete. Archaeological excavations have revealed fragments of tablets and traces of scroll storage, areas that give us glimpses into the intellectual life of the early Persian Empire. You kneel and examine a small fragment of pottery that bears traces of ancient script. Though you can't see, cannot read the words, you can sense the human presence behind them. Someone long dead who once held a stylus or reed pen and carefully formed these marks to preserve some piece of knowledge or experience for future generations. This fragment might contain part of an administrative record, a tax receipt, or inventory of palace supplies that kept the empire functioning. Or it might preserve lines from a poem or prayer, a moment of beauty or spiritual insight that someone thought worthy of preservation. The Persian literary tradition, which reached its classical heights in the works of Ferdowsi, Hafez, and Rumi, has its roots in the oral traditions that flourished at courts like this one. Persian poets were not merely entertainers, but were considered repositories of cultural wisdom and spiritual insight. The Shahnameh, or Book of Kings, composed by Ferdowsi in the 10th century CE, preserves many traditions and legends that date back to the time of Cyrus and earlier. This epic poem of 60,000 verses is not only a masterpiece of world literature, but also a crucial source for understanding ancient Persian culture and values. You rise and continue your exploration, coming to what appears to be the foundation of a large residential building, perhaps quarters for court officials or visiting dignitaries. The rooms are arranged around central courtyards with evidence of sophisticated ventilation systems that would have kept the interiors cool even in the heat of summer. Persian architects were masters of climate control, developing techniques for heating and cooling that were not equaled in Europe until the modern era. Wind towers, underground cooling chambers, and carefully positioned water features all worked together to create comfortable living conditions in a challenging environment. The Persian love of comfort and luxury was not mere self-indulgence, but reflected their theological conviction that the material world is good and that humans should enjoy the gifts that Ahura Mazda has provided. This positive attitude toward pleasure and beauty influenced cultures throughout the Islamic world and eventually reached Europe through the Crusades and trade contacts. You walk through the remains of what was once a garden courtyard where a fountain would have provided the sound of falling water and the cooling effect of evaporation. Around the fountain, flower beds would have been planted with roses, jasmine, and other fragrant plants, creating a sensory paradise that engaged sight, smell, and hearing in a harmonious ensemble. The sound of is burning water. Water was particularly important in Persian garden design, not only for its cooling effect, but also for its spiritual symbolism. Water represents life, purity, and the divine mercy that flows continuously from heaven to earth. The gentle sound of fountains and streams was considered conducive to meditation and prayer. In the center of the courtyard, you can still see the remains of the fountain's base, a circular structure of fitted stones that once supported a more elaborate superstructure of carved marble. or bronze. Water would have risen through a central pipe and fallen in carefully designed patterns back into the basin below. The engineering required to supply water under pressure to fountains throughout the palace complex was considerable, requiring not only the qanat system to bring water from distant mountains, but also local reservoirs, distribution channels, and pressure regulation systems. Persian hydraulic engineers were among the most skilled in the ancient world, were designed as places of retreat and renewal, spaces where the soul could find rest and the mind could achieve clarity. The geometric patterns of the garden beds reflected the underlying order of creation, while the variety of plants and flowers celebrated design creativity that expresses itself in infinite forms. The afternoon is advancing, and the shadows are growing longer. But the warmth of the sun on the ancient stones remains comforting and peaceful. You feel no urgency to hurry your exploration, allowing yourself to move at the pace of contemplation rather than the pace of tourism. This slower rhythm allows you to notice details that might otherwise escape attention. The way different types of stone weather differently, creating subtle variations in texture and color. The patterns formed by lichen and moss growing in the cracks between stones. The small ecosystems that have established themselves among the ruins. A small lizard emerges from a crack in the wall and basks in the warm sunlight. These creatures have probably lived among these ruins for centuries, their ancestors perhaps witnessing the construction of the original buildings. There is something comforting about this continuity of life, the way nature adapts and persists through all the changes of human history. You continue walking, coming to what may have been the palace workshop areas where skilled craftsmen created the beautiful objects that furnished the royal residences. Here, metalworkers would have hammered gold and silver into intricate vessels and jewelry, while textile workers would have woven the fine carpets and tapestries that made Persian luxury goods famous throughout the ancient world. Persian craftsmanship was renowned for its technical excellence and artistic sophistication. Persian metalworks developed techniques for creating complex alloys and surface treatments that were not duplicated elsewhere for centuries. Persian textile workers created fabrics of such beauty and durability that fragments of Persian silk and wool textiles have been found in archaeological sites from Europe to China. The workshop areas would have been bustling with activity during the height of the empire, with craftsmen from many different cultures working side by side, sharing techniques and learning from each other. This cultural exchange was one of the great benefits of the Persian Empire's tolerant and inclusive approach to governance. Greek sculptors worked alongside Egyptian jewelers. Babylonian astronomers collaborated with Indian mathematicians, and Persian poets learned from the literary traditions of all the empire's subject peoples. This synthesis of knowledge and technique created innovations and artistic achievements that would have been impossible in more isolated and homogeneous societies. You examine the foundation of what may have been a forge, where the sacred fire of metalworking would have burned continuously. Fire was central to many Persian crafts, not only metalworking, but also pottery, glassmaking, and the preparation of various chemical compounds used in medicine and alchemy. The Persian understanding of fire as both a practical tool and a sacred symbol influenced their approach to technology and craft. Work was not seen as merely economic activity, but as a form of participation in the divine creative process. This attitude encouraged innovation and excellence, while also maintaining ethical standards in trade and production. Persian merchants were known throughout the ancient world for their honesty and reliability. The Persian saying, "A merchant's word is his bond," became proverbial, and Persian commercial law influenced trade practices from the Mediterranean to Central Asia. This reputation for integrity was based on religious conviction as well as practical considerations. Zoroastrianism taught that lying and dishonesty were among the gravest sins, aligning the believer with Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit, rather than with Ahura Mazda, the source of all truth. This theological foundation for commercial ethics created a level of trust that made long-distance trade possible on an unprecedented scale. You walk toward the edge of the palace complex, where the formal architecture gives way to the more natural landscape of the surrounding plains. Here, you can see the remains of what may have been a royal hunting park, a paradise in the original sense, where the king and his court could enjoy the pleasures of the chase in a controlled and beautiful environment. Persian hunting parks were not mere entertainment venues, but served important social and political functions. The hunt was seen as training for war and as a demonstration of royal courage and skill. Inviting foreign dignitaries to participate in royal hunts was a way of building diplomatic relationships and impressing visitors with Persian prowess. The park would have been stocked with various game animals, including deer, wild boar, and perhaps even lions imported from Mesopotamia or India. Careful management ensured that the animal populations remained healthy and abundant, providing sport for the court, while also serving as a reserve of fresh meat for palace feasts. The design of hunting park would have included artificial hills and valleys, groves of trees for cover, and streams and ponds to provide water for the animals. The landscape was shaped to provide challenging but not dangerous hunting conditions, allowing participants to demonstrate skill and courage without excessive risk. You climb a small rise that may have been one of these artificial hills and look out over the entire site of Pasargadae, spread below you. From this vantage point, you can see how the various buildings and garden areas were integrated into a unified design that worked with the natural topography rather than imposing an alien geometric order upon it. The planning of fascinating places with gardens, Pasargadae reflects a sophisticated understanding of landscape architecture that balanced human needs with environmental constraints. The buildings are positioned to take advantage of cooling breezes and winter sunshine, while the garden areas are located in naturally fertile spots where the water table is high and the soil is rich. Between architecture and landscape was one of the distinctive features of Persian design, and one that influenced garden and urban planning throughout the Islamic world. The great garden cities of medieval Andalusia, the Mughal gardens of India, and the palace complexes of Ottoman Turkey all show the influence of Persian principles of landscape design. The view from this hill also encompasses the broader landscape of the Morghab Plain, where Pasargadae is located. This plain is surrounded by mountains on all sides, creating a natural amphitheater that provides both protection and beauty. The mountains supply water through springs and seasonal streams, while also serving as barriers against invasion and harsh weather. The choice of the landscape, this location for his capital, demonstrates Cyrus's strategic wisdom. Pasargadae was far enough from the main trade routes to be secure from casual attack, but close enough to major roads to maintain communication with all parts of the empire. The climate is moderate compared to the extremes of the surrounding regions, making it comfortable for year-round residents. As the afternoon progresses, the light begins to take on the golden quality that photographers call the magic hour. The ancient stones seem to glow from within, and every surface is highlighted with warm color. This is the light that Cyrus would have seen as he stood in this same spot, contemplating his prophecy, achievements, and perhaps wondering what the future would bring. The Persian appreciation for light was deeply rooted in their religious tradition, which saw light as the primary manifestation of divine presence in the material world. The daily progression of light from dawn to dusk was understood as a cosmic mist, drama in which the forces of good and light struggled against darkness and evil. This theological understanding of light influenced Persian architecture and urban planning. Buildings were designed to capture and channel sunlight in specific ways, creating dramatic effects at significant times of day and year. The Great Staircase at Persepolis, for example, is positioned so that the day is in balance and night and dark remember to survive. Rising sun on the spring equinox, illuminates specific carved reliefs celebrating the renewal of life and the triumph of light over darkness. Here, at Pasargadae, the effects are more subtle, but no less carefully planned. The tomb of Cyrus is positioned so that it catches the first light of dawn, symbolizing the king's role as the earthly representative of Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Light. The palace buildings are oriented to provide pleasant lighting throughout the day, while avoiding the harsh glare of the midday sun. You descend from the artificial hill and make your way back toward the central area of the site, where the tomb of Cyrus stands in its eternal dignity. The late afternoon light has transformed the simple stone structure into something almost ethereal, a monument not just to a king, but to the human aspiration for justice, wisdom, and peace. As you approach the tomb again, you notice details that escaped your attention earlier. The proportions, the structure, follow mathematical relationships that create a sense of harmony and completeness, monumental and intimate. This attention to proportion and mathematical harmony reflects the Persian understanding of the cosmos as an ordered and rational system governed by divine intelligence. The same principles that govern the movements of the stars and planets also govern the relationships between the parts of a well-designed building or garden. Persian architects and craftsmen studied these cosmic principles not as abstract mathematics, but as practical wisdom that could be applied to create beauty and harmony in human environments. This integration of science, art, and spirituality was one of the great achievements of Persian civilization, and one that influenced cultures throughout the medieval world. You circle the tomb once more, noting how the changing angle of the light reveals different aspects of its construction and design. From some angles, it appears massive and permanent. From others, it seems delicate and almost weightless. This visual complexity reflects the complexity of Cyrus himself, a man who combined military prowess with diplomatic skill, practical wisdom with spiritual insight. The legacy of Cyrus extends far beyond his military conquests or even his administrative innovations. He established principles of governance that recognized the dignity and rights of all peoples, regardless of their race, religion, or cultural background. These principles influenced later Persian rulers and eventually found expression in the legal and political traditions of many nations. The Cyrus cylinder, with its proclamation of religious freedom and cultural tolerance, is sometimes called the first charter of human rights. Whether or not this description is historically accurate, the cylinder does represent a remarkable early articulation of principles that we now consider fundamental to civilized society. As the sun continues its descent toward the western mountains, the shadows begin to lengthen dramatically, creating a landscape of light and shadow that seems almost theatrical in its beauty. This is the time of day when the ancient Persians would have gathered for their evening prayers, facing the sacred fire and reciting the ancient hymns of gratitude and praise. You find yourself drawn to the simple beauty of this moment, the way the ancient stones hold and reflect the golden light, the gentle movement of air through the ruins, the distant sound of birds settling for the night. There is something profoundly peaceful about this place, something that speaks to the deepest human longings for meaning, beauty, connection. Inspire and guide human civilization. Standing in the gathering shadows of the afternoon, you feel yourself becoming part of this long historical continuum, another link in the chain of human consciousness that connects the ancient past with the eternal present. The stones around you have witnessed countless such moments of human reflection and communion, and they will witness countless more. The evening light continues to transform the landscape, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold, while the ruins themselves seem to float in a sea of amber light. This is the magic hour when the boundary between earth and heaven seems most permeable, when the material world reveals its spiritual dimensions most clearly. You sit once more on the steps of Cyrus's tomb, feeling the accumulated warmth of the day radiating from the ancient stone. Around you, the ruins settle into the peace of evening, and you feel your own mind settling as well, finding its natural rhythm in harmony with the eternal rhythms of this sacred place. The light grows softer and more diffuse as the sun sets beyond the horizon and the first stars appear in the twilight sky. Here, in this sacred place, you find a quiet peace that whispers to your soul. You breathe in deeply the scent of jasmine and rose, carried on a gentle breeze from the Persian gardens nearby. This is a place where time slows and you are free to simply be. Let your heart open to the beauty around you and embrace the tranquil approaches the horizon, and the first stars begin to appear in the deepening sky. The ancient stones remember all who have come before, and they welcome you into their eternal embrace. The wisdom of Cyrus, the beauty of Persian gardens, the tolerance and dignity of a great civilization, all these become part of your own understanding as you rest here in the gathering twilight. The day fades gently into evening, and the evening promises to fade gently into night. But the peace you have found here among these ancient stones will remain with you, a gift from the past to carry into the future. The echoes of the ancients continue to whisper their wisdom to all who have ears to hear. And as the stars begin to emerge more clearly in the darkening sky, you feel yourself drifting naturally toward the peace of sleep, carried by the eternal rhythms of this sacred place, where time and eternity meet in perfect harmony. The night settles gently over Pasargadae. The ancient soil remembers all its children, and you drift peacefully into deep, restful sleep.